And as I've evolved, I've learned that, to really get people to do more than just the average, to really rise to their potential, you have to kind of have a mutual respect. You have to show them respect in how you work with them, and then you have to earn their respect.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Likewise, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. Charlie is one of America's foremost authorities on respect and leadership development. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast. I'm excited today to have my guest join us, Tom Goldblatt. Tom founded Ravina Capital in 1998 and serves as a managing partner. Businesses hire Ravina Capital to sell companies, raise debt and or equity capital, as well as to advise sellers and buyers of business to structure, execute, and close transactions. Tom's background gives him a unique ability to understand the needs of companies both from an owner and buyer perspective. Tom and Ravina Capital were awarded the Acquisition International's U.S. Debt and Equity Sourcing Firm of the Year Award, the M&A Advisors Distressed Dealmaker of the Year Award, and Wealth and Finance International's annual best for M&A advisory in Illinois. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in accounting from the University of Illinois, a JD Law degree from the University of Chicago, and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University. Tom is a frequent speaker on alternative capital raises in challenging situations and distressed investing. He's also current chairman of the Anti-Defamation League, the Greater Chicago Upper Midwest Regional Board. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Charlie. It's great to see you, and I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So as we go through this discussion about relationships and results and that sort of thing and leadership, why don't we start with you? Tell me, how did you get started in your career?
Well, I got started like I think a lot of people. My kind of goal at the beginning was to really kind of collect experiences and collect education. And so I went to Illinois. I got advice from my dad to learn accounting. I did that. And then I went to law school and I got an MBA. I got a CPA along the way. And I thought, it was all about kind of what, as I've gone on in my career, I've realized more that the interpersonal skills end up being, equally, if not more important. But at the beginning of my career, I was trying to collect different experiences and knowledge that would be useful later on.
Yeah, very good. No, there's no doubt that there's a combination that we learn over time between the results and relationships. So you have significant leadership experience, both leading and advising organizations across numerous businesses. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a leader, and sort of how did you tackle them? And if you could share both examples of when it went well and examples of maybe when it didn't go so well.
Well, I appreciate that. And I really, by the way, enjoyed your book and got a lot out of that. And it brought back a lot of memories and lessons. But I think, and I think particularly that quote that you start the book with Sun Tzu about how there's the different elements of leadership. And I've learned that over time, maybe the hard way. I think one thing is when I was younger and I was a leader in my 30s, perhaps I realize now I lacked confidence because I was young and I was overly tough and authoritative. And I think that ended up, I get a certain type of respect, maybe not behind my back, but to, fair, and people would kind of seem to do what you want, but it didn't work in the long term because it made things more transactional. As I evolved, I've actually kind of learned the lesson of going too far the other way, as trying at some points to be, more of a egalitarian and let everybody be involved and try to step back and be accommodating. And I found that actually also, goes too far and it's not the proper leadership. So now and it's a continually evolving thing, but I find that my leadership more now is towards inspiring, setting a vision and having people go to that and leading by example, by being a real person and listening to the people I have working with me and hear their opinions and take them in and really respect what they're saying. But it's an evolving thing. One of my favorite quotes myself is, experience is something you gain right after you really need it.
Exactly. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So in your discussion about leadership and the idea of respect, you talked about respect can be attained in multiple different ways. One aspect is where respect is expected because of a position. The other one where it's earned as a result of how you treat others. And I wonder if you could comment on your experience in that regard and or experiences you've seen with companies you've looked at or advised.
Yeah, well, and I've been thinking a lot about this topic, especially from reading your book about respect. And I was thinking about it, and I think that, you have kind of two types of leadership. You have the kind of leadership that's kind of transactional, and it's somewhat temporary, where it could be out of fear or it's out of motivation of somebody because they want something, and that doesn't last long. I think one of the things I was gaining from reading your book is about more of the long-termness of respect, and that lasts longer and it goes further. And so what I've seen is that, and I feel like business, by the way, is evolved from maybe when we got into it a couple decades ago, that there was longer term relationships a lot more often, and positions were longer. And I think things are more now temporary and more transactional. But I think for more things that are going to have meaning and go above and beyond just a simple one-time off or I'll do this and that's it, you need to have the respect. I worked when one of my first jobs was at a folding carton company, and I worked for a very successful and tough leader. And he said to me, you try too hard to be liked, you need to be feared and respected. You don't want to be friends with the people, you want them to listen to what you said. And I took that to heart. As I said, I went too far with that. And as I've evolved, I've learned that, to really get people to do more than just the average, to really rise to their potential, you have to kind of have a mutual respect. You have to show them respect in how you work with them, and then you have to earn their respect. Not just because, hey, I'm boss, do it this way, but I'm boss, but let's talk about, let's figure, okay, here's the vision. Let's get everybody to believe in it and move forward on it.
Right, exactly. And as you look at your business of investing in other companies or raising capital for them, what do you look for in the leadership of a company that you would consider funding or acquiring?
I was thinking about that, and this answer is going to be a little bit surprising, but it's truthful. And that is that the first thing I'm looking at when I get involved with leaders of companies that we're going to sell or raise significant money for, or be involved with an act, is I want the leaders to be rational. That's like one of the first things, because what I find is like you don't want the leaders to have kind of their own kind of agenda that maybe is emotional or isn't tied to kind of being practical. So if you find that you have people that are, just kind of have their own agenda and they're going to, that creates issues that you need to kind of control. So I like to have rational. The other things I like to see is a person that really fully understands everything and is able to really have control of what's going on, so that if there's an issue comes up and it's a minor thing, later you have as you're going on selling a company, a lot happens. And one of the things in a transaction is that there's always going to be breaking points. It's something that I've lectured and talked about. And that's the key to deal making, is how to get over the breaking points. Because it's one thing to make a deal, but then time goes on and memories are short, things change. And what we find is, a lot of times, for instance, a company maybe will underperform. I want to find a leader that understands immediately, knows what's going on, knows where to get the answer, has control of it, and is logical, is truthful, And those are the things that we really look for when we're selling a company.
And do you find that those types of leaders are the ones that have the transparent relationships with the people throughout their organization?
Absolutely, because they really need to be able to know what's going on. When we kind of first are getting to know a company, you kind of see it when you walk the factory floor with the owner. Makes a big difference if you see that, like, they're very standoffish, don't seem to know anybody in the factory or anybody, versus the one that kind of says, hey, how's your daughter doing? Did she recover from out of the hospital? That really knows what's going on. So it's really, it's good to see a leader that's got their finger on the pulse and knows the people and knows them as people, and isn't just seem like, they're just helicoptering in and leading from afar.
So have you, when you're viewing that or reviewing that, walking through the factory, have you seen cases where there is people who are standoffish, or they don't have a relationship, or don't necessarily need to know even what's going on at that point in the factory? And what does that do to your valuation estimate of the business?
So if I have a leader that's goes through the factory and doesn't know the employees, it gets me very concerned that they don't really have their pulse on the situation and know what's going on, and gets me a little bit concerned about whether they really, I can trust what they say about going forward as far as their forecasts and what the business is, if they really kind of know what it is, or they're kind of just, running it from afar and really not a great leader.
Right. And in valuing companies, do you also look for the relationship they have with customers and suppliers? And how do you do that?
Well, it absolutely, but that kind of cuts two ways. So you have to be kind of careful there. So you want to have the leader, really have the pulse on the organization. But when we're selling a company, if the leader seems to be the only one with those relationships and is too critical, that becomes a big potential negative of a key man issue that's going to really devalue the company's value. And a lot of times the owner or manager wants to build themselves up. It's a natural human thing to show how important they are. And the fact is, they may be the critical person, but if that's the case, that makes the company less desirable for a sale, because the people acquiring it, even though the person selling may say, oh, I'm going to work for them, I'm committed. The fact is that usually it doesn't work out. And the people acquiring need to, at least, even if it would need to take accommodation, then it may not work out. So I like to see those relationships spread throughout the organization. I like to see the leader basically understand and be familiar with those people and be able to step in if there's a problem. But I don't want to see those relationships and all the key decisions dependent on one key individual, or really, I'm not selling a company, I'm selling that person. And the people buying it may not be comfortable thinking that they're going to stay with it. So it kind of cuts both ways.
That makes a lot of sense. And, since you've had a lot of experience with distressed businesses, would you say that a contributor to the fact that the business is distressed has anything to do maybe with the power of respect or the lack thereof in those organizations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's a good chance that the leader just did not have everybody buy in and went down a direction that put the company in danger. Maybe they were overly strong or pushing that way. Maybe they were weak and couldn't get people to come around. So I do find that, but it's not always correlated. There's obviously many different reasons a company may end up in distress, many of them having nothing to do with the leadership. It just happens to be the situation, but it is how those leaders now navigate out of that. And, how do they react? And you see in this case, really where people can step up, and are they open to help? Are they open to ideas? A lot of leaders will go into like a trench where they duck under the desk and can't even function. And others go into a position of just being fending off and won't accept any type of help. But I would say that what we've found with distressed companies, the most common denominator is where the company tried to grow out of away from its core competence and tried to push growth, often for growth's sake, and maybe ignored where their real core and their profit is, and got into other areas. And often it's a function of being able to see from above. Instead of being in the trees, you can see the forest, and they need to kind of sometimes cut back. But what you'll find is that the leaders often can be attached or emotional to certain things. And so if you can kind of bring them out of the situation and look at things like, here's what the ideal situation from scratch would be, they can kind of see it. But then when you talk about moving this or getting rid of this, become very emotional. And so, as I said, and what makes a good leader for a company we're going to get involved in, I like to see a person that's rational, that doesn't get overly emotional or attached to certain ways that something has to be.
That makes perfect sense. And the idea of controlling emotions, we all have emotions. We're all on an emotional scale of some sort. Looking for the leadership's ability to navigate their own emotional scale, as I say in the book, is very important to understanding their value to the organization.
Absolutely.
So what has been your personal experience with respect in business? Perhaps examples, again, without naming any names, but examples of when you've felt respected and what it meant to you, and maybe when you might not have been respected and what that meant to you.
Yeah, well, I think in situations where I've not felt respected, I think it's very it's very demotivating. You don't feel heard. You feel undervalued, and it's a real turnoff for wanting to put anything in but the minimum. And you have to really kind of get into yourself to self-motivate. And as I've matured and more experienced, I'm probably less concerned about what other people are saying, and much better able to kind of accept it as just somebody's opinion or something like that, and have my own motivation. On the other hand, when people do show you respect and encouragement, it really motivates, and it opens you up, and it makes you, come up with, better ideas and be a more engaging and inspirational leader that people will follow you. So I think it makes a big difference. But, as time goes by, been able to more develop an ability to kind of distance from what's being said and not react immediately, but kind of take a step back and think about what is the best way to respond to this, and think that whatever somebody's saying, that's just one opinion of the moment.
Right. It's important to be able to put things in perspective, and then also for us to also learn what triggers our movement on our own emotional scale up and down, so that we can control that as well, in spite of the environment around us. So what are some of the most important takeaways about respect and leadership you've learned during your career? You've mentioned some of them in this conversation. How would you sort of crystallize that?
Well, I think that everybody wants to be heard. And I think that nobody, one thing I've found is you can never convince people of anything. And so what I've discovered, instead of trying to beat somebody into doing it my way and stuff, I'm much more now try to listen and try, instead of give answers. A lot of times I will do more of a questioning. So I'm listening, and then I'm like, well, what do you see as the risks of this? What do you see as the ways to get out? And, figuring I already know what I know, so it's better to take in this information. So I try to communicate and give respect. And I like to also, one thing I've changed is I used to like have let's say a conference call, and then afterwards you have an after call, and, how did it go? And then I would, want to kind of influence everybody and say, and bias and say, I thought the call went well, but this happened and we need to do this. And that really was terrible. And now I'm like, you know what? I hold back on saying anything, and I kind of go around the room, even to the newer or lower, and hear, what did you think of it? And I'm often very surprised that the people had a totally different thought or reaction. Now, that doesn't mean they're right, I'm right, or wrong, but it is a piece of information of what it's seen. And if I just kind of spew out and say it, I'm never going to hear that. I think also, and I was saying this earlier, but I see, and this was coming to me from reading your book, and you had a lot of really great points, great quotes. It's a really, it's a really easy read, and well worth it for new people and experienced people. But the thing I see is that business, I feel now, and it's become much more temporary, much more transactional. And I feel that there used to be longer term type of relationships, and people were in positions for longer. Customer relationships were longer, everything kind of, and now I think things are are more transactional. But I think respect goes beyond that. Respect is something that is beyond transactional. It's not just, what can you give me? What is your leverage in this situation? Do I need you? Because that only works one time or temporary. And as soon as that leverage is gone, then that relationship is gone. But with respect, that has the potential to go longer term. And it can actually be very good in our business. A lot of times, let's say we're selling a company, and a lot of times we're going to go to a very broad number of private equity and other strategic buyers to see who can win. Sometimes it's a difficult case that has to be done, and it's good to have a relationship with the, and understand, so you can be honest with each other and have that respect. So, I've learned over time for longer term things, and to get something great done, I find you need to have respect, and you need to have, it needs to be something that you end up getting people to buy in and having win-win. You need to understand where each person is coming from. What is their motivation for this? Why did they want to do this? They don't want to just do it, to make you look better, but how did they do it? And so the best thing is when you come up with an idea, and by the end of it, you come off, people don't even realize at the end that it was your idea. Everybody's thanking everybody. It was a win-win-win. And I think there's a lot of respect going around. I think that's the really the greatest part of business.
You've given some great examples of communication processes that really work. And I think that's the other aspect that goes with respect, is how you communicate. And you've given those examples. And to me, being an analytical person, I learned a while ago and needed to learn to listen longer, as I say in the book. So the whole concept of making sure that you're not already assuming what people are saying or where they're going, and you have solved it in your own mind for them, but rather engage them, as you just described, in the process of determining where you're going.
Well, a long time ago, I learned in sales a rule. I went to a sales training, and they call it the 90-10-90 rule. And that means that you're smiling because you must know this, 90% of the time you should be asking questions. And the 10% of the time that you're asking questions, or 90% of the time you should be listening. And the 10% of the time you're talking, 90% of that should be questions. And although I learned that a long time ago, I didn't really learn it until much later. When I was younger, I would often come out of a meeting and people would say, "Hey, you cut me off in there," and they'd be really pissed off, and you'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry." You weren't even thinking because you were so concerned about, getting your points out. And as you kind of go on, you start to really take these things to heart, that you really need to be a listener, that you really need to hear it. And it's usually when the person is saying something that's very important, it's kind of tough to say. They're kind of letting something go and they might hesitate. They might say something contrary first, saying, it kind of seems this way, and there's going to be a but. I could, and this is the soft part that, the payoff that you're waiting for. But a lot of times, because you're eager to talk and to show stuff and stuff, you cut them off and it's done. It's over, that opportunity. So you learn over time, to be patient and subtle, and that you really need to listen and hear what the other people, have to say. And that's where the payoff is.
Yeah, it points to the age-old adage, there's a difference between listening and waiting to talk. And for me, that phrase helped me clarify how I needed to change my activities to show that I really cared about other people, which I did. But if I interrupted them, that didn't demonstrate that. So it's very important there. So what are you most proud of as a leader, Tom? What can you share with us?
Well, again, I'm most proud of the times where I've had a vision of how something can be and how you can correct something. So let's just, there's a lot of different things, but let's just say on a very difficult sale we had of a distressed company that had lost a lot of money, owed people a lot of money, and people really thought the best thing is to potentially go away. But I'm like, well, there's something really good here. And if we can just kind of focus people on the future and we fix the problem, this can be a successful thing. And it was kind of believing that and then getting everybody to kind of come around and seeing that vision and implementing it, and then getting others to come on board, and then ultimately having a super successful transaction and sale and being rewarded for that. But that's, to me, is the most rewarding, is where you see something, you have a vision, and you get other people to kind of buy into that and go along with you, and then you have the outcome in reality, and you're like, it happened, it's happening.
Yeah, no, there's nothing better than a plan coming together like that. Is there a leader that's most influenced you?
A leader that's inspired me from their story is Winston Churchill. Just think about and I like how he stuck to his conviction, and so there was a period in the before the war in the 30s that he was really ostracized, but he saw the danger of Hitler and stuck to it and thought there can be no compromise with that. And the whole country at that point with Chamberlain was moving towards appeasement. And so Churchill was on the outside and really not important character at that point. And I think he stuck with, and over the long haul, history came around to show that, he was correct. So I like that, having that conviction and sticking with it. I think a lot of times things can get tough, and you just want to kind of take the easy way out and quit. So I think that, to me, I like stories of people that kind of stuck with it and then were able to achieve the thing and just held in there and ultimately prevailed.
Yeah, that's a great example of stick-to-itness for sure in history. So if you're speaking with an upcoming leader, what advice would you give them specifically? Let's say somebody who's relatively new to share your experiences and wisdom. What would you most likely, first one or two things, say to them?
Well, I think that as far as it's first of all, for people, it's a long game. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon, and I think that also you need to kind of do the work, and you need to lead by example. You need to not just kind of be tough and be mean. And these are, as I mentioned, these are some of the things I had to learn through experience. But it's to be appreciative. It's to be a better listener. It's to be care about your reputation and your trustworthiness. Allows you to sleep at night. I always like to say, tell the truth. It's very easy to remember. So I would tell upcoming leaders is play the long game, lead by example, have care about your own brand and integrity. Treat everybody as an important person, and things and hang in there, and things will work out.
Oh, that's great advice. I want to thank you for sharing your experiences and insights. It's been great for our audience. And so appreciate you being on the show today. I want to thank you again for being here. And I especially want to thank you, the listeners, for this episode of The Power of Respect. If you like what you heard today, please consider sharing the podcast and visit our website, expertsinhow.com. And if you'd like to read my book, The Power of Respect in Business, it's available on Amazon. Thanks again for listening. And remember, respect builds trust. Trust builds relationships, which is the hallmark of leadership. Thank you.
This has been the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Likewise, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. To listen to more episodes and to learn about Charlie's leadership development programs, visit his website, expertsinhow.com.